So we still have some time for Q&A. So I would like to open the floor if anybody would like to ask some questions.
This is a very simple question. For as a starter guide, do you recommend us to look into the kitab in our bagi or straight to purification of the hadith by Hamzah Yusuf?
Okay, that's very basically it depends, isn't it? First, your both of these books are roughly at the same level. They have their own strengths, but they roughly one thing which I suppose which is quite helpful in this is a listing provided by Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang. What he did was to classify the works of tasawwuf into three categories. The first category pertains to works such as Penawar Bagi Hati, Bidayatul Hidayah. Basically, these books deal with matters of purification of hearts. It deals with matters of dealing with internal problems of the soul, and perhaps some of them included in this classification include some of the works of Imam Haddad, like Risalatul Mu'awanah and so on, deal with practice of the religion whose aim is to arrive at spiritual experience. So all books which are in this category can be read individually or in comparison with each other, and they do not tire you, and you can continue to read on this because it does not lay burden and nor does it put you at risk, unless of course you are of a different temperament. Somebody who is more philosophical in nature perhaps will want to read books at the second level. Books at the second level include Sheikh Ibn Atta'illah As-Sakandari's Kitabul Hikam. Many of us make the mistake of going straight into the Kitabul Hikam without prior reading in these works, either Penawar Bagi Hati or the Ihya Ulumuddin, which will give you a strong foundation, because the Hikam already presumes that you have understood matters of the tariqah before you can go into the matters of haqiqah. And then there are works of tasawwuf of the third degree, which is the most risky in nature, that is prohibited to the masses. Unless you have done level 1, level 2 and decide that you still require more, then perhaps you do level 3. Or you are somebody like Sa'duddin Al-Kunyawi, who have underwent 20, 25 years of training, and at that level of preparation of intellect, you can go into these advanced works. This, in the Malay world, includes the works of Sheikh Hamzah Fansuri, Sheikh Nuruddin Raniri, as well as some works by Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang, Sheikh Yusuf Makassari, because these deal with matters which are highly abstract in nature, which are beneficial to them, but detrimental to those at the first two levels. So Abdul Samad Palembang's guideline for reading works in tasawwuf, I think, still works today, except that it needs to be updated with regards to the works which has been published in these respective levels. However, those who go for this kind of works must be wary. I think Professor Zaini reminded me, for example, that Tazkiyatun Nafs sometimes in this regard does not work if you require a kalamic antidote, for example. Look in the Quran, for example. Somebody who suffers from shirk, somebody who suffers from lack of belief in prophets, somebody who suffers rationally to understand the truth of religion, they cannot truly benefit from this. Yes, because, for example, the Quran chastises the Christians, despite having certain practices such as celibacy and monasticism, which are commendable because these are means through which they fight their lower desires. Because they do not possess a proper framework in Aqidah, gradually it led to their secularization. So what I would recommend at the beginning stage, I suppose, is to commit yourself to a rational introspection, either individually or preferably with a sheikh or with a spiritual master, to know whether or not you are ready even to begin the path of purification. I say this because only a few weeks ago, when I was in Sweden, I spoke to some Muslim brothers and sisters, and their minds are so secularized, but they don't know it because they resolve to remain Muslim externally. Yes, they do. They perform all their prayers. They fast during Ramadan, and they try to not do anything which is haram. But yet, for example, they have a problem with some fundamental elements in the worldview of Islam. One of them asked me, for example, can we conceive of a different relationship between human beings and God rather than servitude? Yes, because for them servanthood, submitting to God is a problem. Now, if you suffer from that, purification of the heart will not work for you, for example. Yes. So yes, I'm adding to your question basically. But I hope it clears it. Yes, you can read both at the same time, and reading both with somebody who is an accomplished master of tasawwuf will greatly enhance it, of course. Yes. Brother Amran.
How many questions can I ask? I have a few questions. Since I was allowed to ask a few questions. Okay, the first question is, just now you mentioned on the transformation that Imam Ghazali did with respect to medical analogy. You said there's two transformations that you could come up with, but you only gave one. At least I noted down one. I might have missed the second one. The second question is, why is it that Islamic ethics has to be aligned to Ihya? You mentioned it just now, but it didn't elaborate further.
Okay.
And the third question is, how do we know we're sick?
Yes.
We go to a doctor when we know we're sick. So how do we know we're sick? I mean, you alluded to the question, to this particular question when you were mentioning the experience in Sweden. However, now, how do we know we're sick?
Okay.
Since many of us, we go to our day-to-day things, we don't realize we're sick. Or are we sick?
Yes.
So those are my three questions. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay, thank you. With regards to the first, the two analogies of medicine, I said, one of them is derived from the Ihya, the other is derived from the Munkid min ad-dalal, the deliverance from error. The deliverance from error, I said, is about trusting the Prophet, basically as a physician to cure you. The second one, from the Ihya, is from the third quarter, meaning the rubuk muhlikat, the destructive vices. Here Imam Al-Ghazali likens the muhlikat, the destructive vices of the soul, to sicknesses of the soul with ilaj, with cure. So these are the two. Second, why should the Ihya be considered as the foundational ethical work in Islam? Why can't there be another one? There can be, I suppose, theoretically, but I would say that the Ihya, first because of its comprehensive nature. It's very difficult, I think, for anyone in our time or even before to be able to come up with a system like Imam Al-Ghazali, through which he can first, in the rubuk of ibadah and the rubuk of adah, the first two quarters, he covers all aspects there is with regards to the day-to-day living. Yes, the ibadah as well as the adah. That means to say, he has exhausted the means through which a servant lives with others and a servant lives with God. Yes, he has covered all the Arkanul Islam. He, aside from the Arkanul Islam, he added to that dhikr, Kitabul Dhikr, Kitab Tilawatul Quran. All these, Sawm and so on, are being discussed both in their spiritual as well as their external aspect, Zahir and Batin. And then in the Rubu' Adat, friendship, Suhbah, marriages, and so on and so forth, that covers all aspects. And in the third, basically, Imam Al-Ghazali's Ihya is so exhaustive that it covers all aspects of life, such that it prepares you to become, to experience or to prepare yourself for his last book, which is the Kitab Dhikrul Maut. Yes, somebody who undergoes the Ihya experience is already prepared to die in that sense, but yet still, whilst living, contains sufficiently the character that is needed to make the world a better place. Yes, because there is in the first two quarters already a book on the characteristics of the Prophet Muhammad, which ultimately the whole living is modeled upon. Yes, and then the Kitab Dhikrul Maut discusses the death of the Sahabas, And the Kitabul Ilm in the first already covers the purpose of knowledge in Islam. So he got it all covered basically in the Ihya Ulumuddin, such that nothing is amiss. On the other hand, I would think that Professor Nakib Al-Attas's concept of religion and the foundation of ethics and morality is also extremely important for our time. Because Professor Al-Attas, in that chapter, what he does is he analyzes the term deen. And the term deen is extremely important in our conceptual network of ethics, because religion for us is the foundation of our ethical behavior and our morality. And this religion, what Professor Al-Attas does with it, is that he looks into all the significations involved in deen. And what is being portrayed and revealed is a very rich experience, whose richness is only matched by the reality of living that life out. And there he maps the relations between man and God, the other various metaphors that is used in the Quran. In reality, the Quran doesn't just limit itself to a cure for sicknesses, but also religion is conceived of in business terms also, in the sense that to promote felicity in the afterlife, prosperity. And then there is a part of religion that pertains to love and unveiling and so on. And these are all variously discussed in both the concept of religion as well as the ihya. As to the third question, how do we know that we are sick? Well, look at the experience that you get from reading either Sheikh Abdul Qadir Mandili or Imam Al-Ghazali's third quarter, isn't it? Like, we don't know physically that we're sick unless we come across a doctor or we read a prescription, isn't it? Or we read, like symptoms, isn't it? You go to supposing you're there to the clinic, you don't conceive yourself as sick, isn't it? But you're there perhaps to take an MC or a vaccination for your child, and while sitting down, you look at the symptoms. And then you look at number 1, oh, I have that. Number 2, I have that. Oh, I have number 3 too. Number 4, number 5. Now that's me. Oh my God, I'm sick. Like that. So likewise, for example, if you want to get an experience of being beaten up, try to attend some of these. Don't come to the kitab Penawar Hati when he's already discussing the virtues, isn't it? When he's discussing sabar, or when he's discussing syukur, I have that. Yes, mahabbah, I have that. It is easy to become, because you love yourself, you would say that. But come to when he discusses, love of the world, love of the things that are unstable in this world, ujub, riya, takabbur. For example, Syekh Abdul Qadir Mandili as well as Imam Al-Ghazali, they are very subtle to the extent that sometimes even the things which are outwardly being portrayed as good in reality is bad. Yes, he gives the example that included in the part of riya. For example, is somebody who dresses down to the extent that he looks like a poor person, and he has lost all weight, yes, so that he looks like a Sufi. That is also a riya. That is also a form of riya, and so on and so forth. There's many more of these kinds of examples. Then you will not be able to escape some of these things, that you are indeed suffering some of this sickness. But if you suffer from the sickness of worldview, now that's more dangerous, and that's more difficult to settle, because sometimes when you suffer the sickness of worldview, because Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala knows that in reality, if you do not inhabit the worldview of Tawheed, your worldview will be that of shirk. But most people in our times do not suffer the shirk of polytheism, but they suffer what is called shirk khafi, yes, the hidden form of shirk, the non-manifest kind of shirk. In particular, it pertains to wanting the religion to serve you rather than the other way around. Yes, and even more particular case is when you start trying to justify your practices on the bar of religion. In other words, for example, when you start looking at the requirements of religion and you're not willing to submit to God, Yes, again, in the case of both the sickness of the heart as well as the sickness that derive from corrupted worldview, it will be easier if you come across an expert, isn't it? The expert will be able to tell from your usage of language with regards to worldview. If you put things in the wrong places, if you do not understand that the akhirah is worth more than the world, and many more sentences that you use that reflect this. Of course, you shouldn't also become, you shouldn't live in an area of self-doubt to the extent that you constantly doubt whether or not you have iman. Because in the Aqaid an-Nasafi, it is recommended there that a Muslim, he said, once you're a mu'min, you should not say, ana mu'min insha'Allah. You should not say that I am a believer insha'Allah, but rather you should say, ana mu'min alhamdulillah. In reality, the best way to cure yourself is to lay bare your soul before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. And there are signs, isn't it? The symptoms of psychic well-being when you're in communion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The signs of a healthy soul is that you are not broken by suffering, nor will you be defeated. You are not broken or defeated by suffering, nor are you tempted by good fortune. Yes, if your good fortune makes you arrogant, then you should be careful. If suffering makes you lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you ought to be careful. So that's, I think, does it answer the three inquiries? Any other question? Do we still have time?
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Just now, I think I've heard you mentioning a couple of times that on top of reading the books, we are also we need to find good teachers. But I guess maybe these teachers are more apparent to you. They are more obvious who these people are. But then for people who are searching, they do not know who are the right teachers.
Yes.
It's not clear.
Yeah.
So is it possible for you to share with us a couple of teachers we can look towards to find guidance?
Yes.
I think that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Just wondering, a SIM card can cause physical sickness, like earlier medical diagnosis. Because sometimes when I meet patient, they believe that their sickness because of heart or spiritual sickness. They opt for looking for alternative medicine because of that belief.
Okay. Well, to the first question about finding the right teachers. First, a general word of caution. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I heard this through various teachers, said that towards the end of time, what will happen is that the generality of people will be sick. And when you find that the generality of people will be sick, that means to say their sickness is when they are afflicted with the love of this world and they have a fear of death. And when you have the generality of the people are sick, it is said that the scholars in general will be fasiq. Yeah? Fasiq, that means to say they might, I suppose, continue to teach the science of religion, but they suffer in a sense that they are not as cautious as the previous generations, and some of them are given to the temptations of the world. This is dealt with in some detail according in Imam Al-Ghazali's Kitab Al-Ilm. He said there that he gave signs of the ulama su', yes, the corrupt scholars, yes, the ulama dunya, meaning to say those who use their scholarship for the sake of gaining access of this world. And then there are the ulama al-akhirah, the ulama billah, the true inheritors of the prophets. I don't think it's fair for me to give you names of scholars, because that will already first it will reveal to you that I'm partisan towards certain scholars, and some people may judge me to be unfair because I haven't come up with the criteria. Do I therefore just go with certain scholars because I like them? So it is better therefore for me to give you the characteristics of the scholars that will reveal to you which kind of scholars that I am partisan towards. Yes. First and foremost, I think in our time it's very important that the scholar be somebody who, as an inheritor of the Prophet, he must possess certain proofs. One of the proofs is that the scholar doesn't grow in arrogance with his knowledge. So arrogance is a major factor through which you can judge whether or not. Of course, again, then perhaps if you begin with a sick heart, you might think that somebody who has knowledge is arrogant, but that's not necessarily so. Claiming to have knowledge is not arrogance. But arrogance, according to the Prophet, it has two characteristics. First is when you belittle other people. And then secondly, when you obscure yourself from the path of truth. Now that's arrogance, because that's arrogance towards Allah in reality. Secondly, it would help, of course, as an indicator, it is said here that true scholars have a tendency to not be able to separate themselves from Imam Al-Ghazali. This is because Imam Al-Ghazali is the fount of spiritual knowledge in Islam. So whoever has a spiritually subtle nature will always gravitate towards Imam Al-Ghazali. So if such and such person, for example, will say that, will cite the weaknesses of Imam Al-Ghazali and explain to him as a danger, I would question such a person. Because Imam Al-Ghazali, to me, based on the books that I have read, nobody is more in love with this religion other than him. So closeness to Imam Al-Ghazali is a simple indicator through which we can judge. Thirdly, to be humble towards previous scholars. In particular, for example, that's why our scholars have madhabs. Yes, that's why Imam Al-Ghazali wouldn't consider it to be beneath him to claim that he was a Shafi'i, despite his achievements in the realms of fiqh and his achievements in the realm of usul that surpass the previous scholars. Yes, his original discoveries and original contributions to these specific disciplines far outweigh the original founders of these of fiqh, for example, as well as aqidah. But yet he doesn't deem it to be inappropriate for him to consider himself a muqallad, the follower of a Shafi'i, and the muqallad of Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari. In our times, for example, the likes of Professor Al-Attas, he said, if someone asks you about me, to Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, he said, then tell them that I am a Shafi'i according to my madhab. In theology, I follow the Ash'ari Maturidi line, and in terms of tasawwuf, I go by the school of Imam Al-Ghazali, like that. So it shouldn't be difficult for you to acknowledge, yes. And this is also the characteristic through which Abdul Qahir al-Baghdadi, yes, the theologian of the 4th century, this was how he came up with a topology to distinguish between which sects are accepted within the fold of the Ahlul Sunnah and which ones are rejected. Abdul Qahir al-Baghdadi was saying that the characteristic of the saved sect is the one that followed the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad and the Khulafa al-Rashidin. Yes, follow the Sunnah. So that means to say, if your tongue is easy to attack the Sahabas, for example, then your iman is suspect. If your tongue is easy, on the other hand, to attack the household of the Prophet Muhammad, if you have an uneasiness, for example, a hatred towards the descendants of the Prophet, which is unjustified by nature, then also your knowledge is suspect. If your talks tend to be full of criticisms of other people who are in your tongue, then your knowledge is suspect. So these are some of the characteristics. I think this is a better criteria than to just give you follow so and so and so and so scholar, isn't it? I hope that answers your question. Now, as for the relations between the spiritual as well as the physical, first, I'm not a medical practitioner, so I think the parts where the comments pertaining to the physical body, I'm not in the position to answer. But it is possible, where at least I've read the view of some psychologists, yes, the relations between, psychosomatics, isn't it? If you suffer from depression and anxiety, obviously you will have some physical relations. And similarly, if you suffer from, if you suffer from shaqawa, Shaqawah is a generic term in the Quran referring to a sickness of the soul. And this sickness of the soul, according to the Quran, includes disquietude. It includes straitened circumstance. It includes something which is called ham and gham, the foreboding dread, anxiety, the fear of the unknown. It includes also in the Yawmul Akhirah something called hasrat. Hasrat in Malay, whereby you would look on the past with nostalgia to look back on it. The source of shaqawa, according to Professor Al-Attas in that chapter on happiness, is because of lack of certainty with regards to your identity and your ultimate destiny. And the counter to that is certainty with regards to your identity and your ultimate destiny, and the practice of the religion that brings you towards the gradual discovery of that identity and certainty. Now, where the shakawa is concerned, if it becomes the substratum of your life, yes? That means it's substratum, like when you build a building, it's the foundation of your life. Then every single good that comes becomes corrupted through the substratum which is corrupt. Obviously, it might or it might not have physical symptoms. But even if it doesn't have physical symptoms, life would eventually be unbearable. Yes, because supposing you imagine that the soul in reality is far more powerful than your physical body. That is why your desires can never be satiated in this world. Yes, that's why the Prophet said, if one of you were given a mountain of gold, he would ask for 2 mountains of gold. If he were given a constituent, he would want to become Prime Minister one day, isn't it? There is nothing that can truly fulfill the desires, except that you understand the limitations of the desire and then you curb it. But in reality, the soul is from the Alamul Amar. Yes, the Alamul Amar meaning to say the realm of command. And in that realm, we are as malak, we are as angels. And it is, according to Imam Al-Ghazali in the Kitab Al-Sabar, in the book of patience, if we are able to contain ourselves with patience with regards to this world, in the Akhirah, in reality, we will live in a manner that is suitable for our souls. That is in permanence, everlastingness, where our powers are not limited, where our desires will be perpetually satisfied. But on the other hand, if our worldview is just restricted to this world, that is, if it's just restricted to this world, you cannot be happy with it. And once you're not happy with it, either you will be sick in your body, or if you're not sick in your body, you will be bitter in your life. You constantly, it might come to a point when tragedy will not be enough. Yes, when seeing somebody suffering will not produce the catharsis anymore. And indeed, this is what happened in the 20th century. Yes, with world wars, yes, in the age of anxiety, according to the existentialist philosophers, they did say that tragedy is no longer enough. And when tragedy is not enough, meaning to say the watching and the reading of books about great people and their eventual downfall no longer does it for your soul, eventually it might lead to something called sparagmos. Sparagmos is where, you result in a sort of violence, where either you will result to killing spree, ataupun in the Malay language, you run amok, mengamuk like that, until the anger is subsided. Yes, it comes from the anger principle. Yes, according to Imam Al-Ghazali, it starts with anger, and if the anger is not alleviated, it remains in your heart. It transforms itself into al-hiqq. Yes, this sort of hatred, whereby you will see that you're in a sick soul when social media is used as a means through which you find the weaknesses of other people. Just now, in the evening, I was just conversing with my wife. She told me, my dad told her that there's a person who's being followed by hundreds of thousands of people. And then she told me, please tell Abba that when you're being followed by 100,000 people, your followers doesn't mean your fans. Yes, it could be that if you're being followed by 100,000 people, only 1,000 of them like you. The 99,000 follow you because they need somebody to fulfill that hiqd, that shamata. And you will know this, yes, because our society is full of such people, isn't it? You are just there on the internet. You're just there looking to release that anger. And often to somebody who doesn't deserve it, isn't it? You will look for somebody who is at most plain, yes? You will look to somebody who is mediocre in nature, in reality has never done anything wrong to you. Perhaps the person is without talent. You should just feel pity for the person. But you use that instead you convert that pity to lash out at your own frustrations in life. In reality, you're not frustrated with life per se. In reality, you are being reduced to this world which is unbecoming of you. That's why Imam Al-Ghazali said in the Ayyuhal Walad, this body is a stable for beasts or it is a cage for birds. If it is a cage for a bird, once you die, that soul of yours, ihtazza arshur rahman, yes, it will soar upwards to the sky of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to return with the soul of the great. And Allah's arash, His throne, will shake at your return. On the other hand, if your soul is a stable for a beast within you, yes, if you've never discovered yourself to yourself, or you've never introduced yourself to your real self, in the sense that you have never rediscovered your covenant of Alastu bi Rabbikum, then you will be dragged to hellfire. Yes, you will be dragged by fierce angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, the Zabaniya, and there will be nothing that you can do to do that. Once Sheikh Abu Bakr bin Salim, Sheikh Abu Bakr bin Salim is a great wali of the past few centuries. It is said that of Sheikh Abu Bakr bin Salim that he is an extremely wealthy man also, and only by coincidence, or rather by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decision. He used to trade in Taman, yes, he sold Taman. And because Allah wanted to make him rich, that year, basically, the price of Tamar multiplied. Suddenly he became, in effect, what we would call today a millionaire. So his richness was known throughout the lands of Arabia. Then once a kafir came to him who was abjectly poor. Yes? And this man said to Sheikh Abu Bakr bin Salim, how come, your prophet, how come your prophet said that the world is a prison for the believer and a place of enjoyment for the kafir? Yes, when I'm the one living in abject poverty. Yes, I'm I disbelieve in God, but I'm not enjoying life. I'm suffering, and you, who's supposed to be living in prison, is enjoying all these luxuries in this world. Then Shaykh Abu Bakr bin Salim retorted. He said, compared to the life that you will have, this is heaven for you. And compared to the life that I will have, this is a prison for me. Yeah. So do not degrade your own selves. Yes. That's why the Quran, in order to convey to you the extreme loss, yes, say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by time, yes, and time is a reality to us all. Wal asri innal insana lafi khusr. Yes, by time, indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears, and this is a serious statement. He said, all humankind is in a state of loss. Illa alladhina amanu, unless you have iman. Because only with iman will this temporary burden of existence will be uplifted. Without iman, you will suffer existence. Existence is insufferable for those who doesn't have iman. Yes. Until suicide becomes a real philosophical problem if you do not have iman. But as for those who have iman, Allahu Akbar, yes, those who have iman will be able to solve their symptoms of psychic distress by dhikrullah. Yes, because Allah promises them, ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. The dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives calmness to the heart. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also said that of the people who are His awliya, la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. There is no fear that besets them. Yes, they will never feel alone, because in the aloneness of being of going to sleep or when they wake up, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is closer to them than their jugular veins.